Business owners, public servants, and fellow corporate hippies, do you want to make a bigger impact in your world, but you feel like your words let you down? Perhaps you ramble, you talk too fast, you think out loud, or you go down all the rabbit holes. Well, inside my Impact Club, people like you get feedback on just these matters. We have advice, mentoring in our fortnightly group coaching calls, and there's an anytime online coaching platform that you can use as a member. Find out if My Impact Club is right for you by clicking on the link to the Impact Club in the show notes. Welcome to another episode of Speaking with Confidence. On this show, I coach business owners, public servants, humble leaders, and other corporate hippies how to speak with confidence, authority, authenticity, and impact. It's awesome to have you here for another episode. And today I am talking about one of my all-time favorite topics, and that is how to establish credibility without sounding too boastful. Also known as how to establish credibility without sounding like a wanker. Yes, I said it. One of the biggest issues that we have as human beings, I'm quite convinced, particularly in, I'm going to say in most of the cultural groups that I work with, which is Southeast Asia, Latin America, Australia, women, in other words, not the Americas or the not USA, where it's very common for us to boast and talk about how good we are. One of the biggest issues is, well, how do I talk about myself? How do I establish credibility? How do I establish authority? How do I let my audience know that I actually know some things without sounding like I'm boasting? And in fact, I was teaching this framework, my I Am Story framework, to a group of culturally diverse entrepreneurs just the other week. And one of the women said, I really love the framework, Kat. I was practicing in the networking session afterwards. I was practicing telling my stories, telling my how good I am stories. And it kind of felt good in the moment. But then when I got home, I was so embarrassed. I thought, oh my goodness, I have been so boastful. And she said that she actually had trouble sleeping because she was just so embarrassed by how boastful she'd been. There's so much to unpack here, so much to unpack. And so what I want to do in this particular episode is unpack that whole notion of why we find it so hard to talk about ourselves. I also want to then give you my framework, as well as refer to some other episodes where I dive deeper into this particular framework. And I want to give you permission. I want to give you permission to toot your own horn. Because goodness knows, if you don't toot it, no one else will. So let's dive in. Yep, culturally, many of us, for a whole host of different reasons, are resistant to boasting or bragging. In Australia, we have the tall poppy syndrome. There's a bit of the, oh God, who does she think she is kind of tear down. And whilst I think that has diminished a fair bit in the last few years, there is still a notion that we don't talk ourselves up. We don't sell ourselves, and most of us find selling ourselves really uncomfortable. Other people will have that argument, they'll have that belief of, well, my work should speak for itself. The results that I deliver should speak for itself. Well, that would be nice, is what I'm going to say. That would be nice. But even authors of a published book have to promote the book. They have to go on book tours. They have to stand in bookshops and talk about why they wrote the book. Our work alone doesn't speak for itself, because I'll be honest, people aren't looking at our work unless we're calling attention to it. So if you are an entrepreneur or a business owner, and one of the reasons why you listen to this podcast is because you want to improve your speaking skills so you can reach more potential clients, then you need to be showing them your work. Your work doesn't speak for itself until they see your work. And similarly, in fact, very true for my public sector clients. The public sector is so busy, so chaotic, so fragmented, that if you're not calling out and showcasing what you've done, if you're not pointing to the projects that you've just completed or the activations that you were a part of, then people don't see your role in it because it all just happens. It all magically just happens. So it would be lovely if your work spoke for itself. And the work that you do is really important, and you need to learn how to talk about that work as well. The other thing that I remind people of is, how can you help people if people don't know how you can help? One of the reasons why it's important to get comfortable with talking about yourself, talking about what you do, talking about why you care about what you do, and talking about your skills, your talents, your expertise and your experience, is because that way you can help more people. And I'm pretty confident that if you're listening to this podcast, you are an impact-minded leader. You want to help more people. You want to be of service. And so you need to let them know. You need to let them know that you've got the experience to do that. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. There is a fine, fine, fine line that we traverse when we're talking about ourselves. And we have all seen those speakers or those personalities who take their tooting just a little bit too far, and they look like a bit of a wanker. You know, they're part of it, I think, is because there is a lack of substance. You know, when people are overstating their accomplishments, or when they're trying too hard to talk about how good they are, I think energetically we feel that. And so that's why they come across as full of themselves. Whereas when you authentically tell your stories of what you've done, where you've been, how you help, then that comes across with a degree of confidence. That comes across with a degree of congruence. There's a credibility there. So one of the techniques that I have been using now for a very long time is called brag bag stories. Now, as you're listening, I know that you're already freaking out a bit. What do you mean brag bag stories? I can't brag. I can't brag. So first of all, I want to paint you the picture. I imagine a brag bag as like Santa's sack. And instead of a sack that I throw over my shoulder full of toys like Santa has, this is a sack full of all of the stories that I have collected from my real life, from my lived experience, that point to my credibility, my authority, my experience, my education, my reason why, my perceptions, my perspectives. It's a bag that is stuffed full with those stories. And if you're kind of sitting there going, oh, yeah, but God, I don't want to do that. Well, you're already towing around a caravan of all of the crappy stories about yourself, why you're not good enough, how you failed that time, how you didn't get that promotion, how this is your umpteenth failed business, and blah, 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 blah. Like you tow that caravan around of crap stories. So why not replace, or actually not even replace, just decouple that caravan of crap stories and instead create a brag bag full of stories that tell you how good you are. Now, one of the things that people bump into when I talk about this brag bag is that we don't like to brag. And despite that resistance from thousands of people now, I keep the phrase here because if I just told you to go looking for your fact stories, you'd go back into that caravan of crap. Whereas if I force you, if I invite you, if I ask you to elevate your thinking into finding the brags of your life, then you'll start painting a different picture for yourself. Now, I need to credit source here. Brag Bag Stories comes from the book Brag, The Art of Tooting Your Own Horn Without Blowing It, by an author called Peggy Klaus. It was written probably 20 odd years ago by Peggy's an American author. This book was specifically written for women who weren't getting promotions, who weren't being seen in the workforce 20 odd years ago. Yes, we have come some way. Not necessarily far enough, but we have come some way. I don't recommend buying the book. I've had a few clients do it and it's dated a little bit. So that's, this isn't a book recommendation. I just want to cite source. Brag Bag Stories comes from Peggy Klaus's book, Brag. Now, what I want you to think about with finding your brag bag stories is you're literally just going back through your history, your life, all of it, to find the stories that point to why you're good at what you do. And by the way, yes, you are good at what you do. You wouldn't be sitting here listening to me if you didn't think you were good at what you do, because you have stories to tell and you have an impact that you want to make on the world. Okay, so let's just put aside that not good enough stuff for later. In terms of your brag bag stories too, if you're still having that notion of, but I can't brag, well, so many different people have said this in different ways, so I'm not going to cite this, but if it's true, it ain't bragging. It ain't bragging if you can back it up. It ain't bragging if it's the truth. So one of my brag bag stories, I've taught thousands of people now over the last 4 years how to speak and how to show up with authority, authenticity, and with confidence. Another brag bag story is that I was Brisbane's Chief Digital Officer for 6 years, and during that time I did a whole heap of things that I'm really proud of, one of which was establishing what is now known as the Brisbane Business Hub, which was then called the Capital, which was the city's startup hub. That particular initiative and fighting for that initiative actually sparked a wave of co-working and entrepreneurial spaces in the heart of the CBD, whereas up until that point, they'd all been on the outskirts. Brag bag stories come from all sorts of places. Brag bag stories can also come from your childhood. Ask me about being 6, 7, and 8 years old when I used to bring together the neighbours' kids to put on concerts in the school holidays. Yes, I was the MC and the compere, and yes, I was trying to figure out how to charge their parents to come and watch their own kids perform, because entrepreneurial and loving a microphone, loving performing. Yes, that's me. Your brag bag stories can also just come from, well, why are you currently doing what you are doing? This is particularly true for entrepreneurs and for public servants who feel like they've ended up where they are accidentally. Like it wasn't obvious to them a few years ago that this is where they would be now, but a series of opportunities, realizations, discoveries, setbacks, promotions, acting up, whatever it is, have led you to this place. And instead of telling ourselves, oh, this is an accident, I shouldn't really be here, instead look at that and go, well, actually, how did that happen? Oh, that's how that happened. That's a brag bag story. That's a brag bag story. Now, I mentioned these particular episodes in last week's podcast, but I'm going to mention them again because I dive deep into what I used to call my Earn the Right framework. I now call it my I Am Story framework. But if you want to dive deeper into this Earn the Right framework, then you can do that. Episode 7 is called Overcoming Why Me, How to Manage Imposter Syndrome. And then episode 33 of this very podcast is an extended recording of one of my online workshops, the Speaking with Impact workshop. And in that particular episode, in that workshop, I do a deep dive in how to pull together your I Am story or your Earn the Right story. So the links to both of those episodes are in the show notes. So this boastful thing piece again, I want to close out on this. Your stories, your life, your lived experience is fact. It happened. sharing those stories, in a way that add to your credibility, your authority, and your authenticity, to be honest, not only helps your audience understand and believe, oh, yes, this person can help me, but it gives a congruence to whatever it is that you're doing now. And so instead of seeming too boastful, instead of seeming like a wanker, instead of seeming like, oh, you're too full of yourself, you instead show up as someone with substance. You occur, you resonate as someone who knows what they're doing. So collecting your brag bag stories is a really powerful way, not just of making a bigger impact, but also changing how you perceive yourself. One of the things that it actually brings me to tears regularly is as I encourage clients to keep finding more and more and more of their brag bag stories, their entire self-perception changes. And their confidence to go out in the world and make their desired impact changes. Because instead of having that caravan of crap stories in terms of I'm not good enough, I've ended up here accidentally, who am I to be doing this? They suddenly have the evidence of, oh yeah, that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm doing this. So dive deep. Dive deep. And if you want to share a couple of brag bag stories with me, please share a couple of your brag bag stories with me. Please tell me all about it. Then find me on Instagram and just tell me who you are by sharing a couple of your brag bag stories. You can find me on Instagram at Kat Matson. That's CATMATSON. You'll see my name in the show notes. You just find me on Insta. One last thing before I go. It's these kind of conversations, but where you get to practice, you get to say, hey, Kat, is this a good brag bag story? I'll help you put together your brag bag stories into your I am story. That's what happens inside the Impact Club. The Impact Club is where public servants, business owners, other impact-minded leaders and corporate hippies come together to get the support that they need to make their desired impact in the universe. We have 2 monthly coaching calls, yes, that's correct, and an always on coaching platform. It's such a powerful way of checking in on your stories, getting clear on how to structure an upcoming speech, asking, oh, does anybody know how I can get the ear of these influential people? Or just mapping out your long-term influence and communication strategies. Again, the link to the Impact Club is also in the show notes, and it is just such a powerful, powerful, powerful way to get the support, the skills, and the confidence you need to go out and make your dent in the universe. So with all of that said, thank you for joining me for another episode. I look forward to seeing you again very, very, very soon. Next week's episode, I have a special guest. She's internet famous. I actually think she's globally famous. And she has spoken on stages all around the world. She's a multi-millionaire. And what we're talking about is how her ADHD is overcome and managed so she can still show up and do all of those things. Plus, I'll be asking her a whole host of other things because I cannot wait to have Denise Duffield-Thomas on the show. So that is next week's episode. With that, I bid you farewell, wishing you a lovely, lovely rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon. In the meantime, here's to confidence and here's to impact. I'll see you soon.